Tonight we step not into a journey of distance, but into a journey of presence. This is not about traveling across landscapes, but about softening into the landscape of our own being. We turn toward the timeless wisdom of the Buddha, teachings that have carried restless hearts for over 2,500 years. These are not commandments to obey, nor doctrines to memorize. They are gentle invitations, invitations to look with fresh eyes, to release the tight grip of striving, and to remember the quiet reservoir of peace that has been waiting within you all along. Here, together, we walk this ancient path through stories and truths that are simple, yet profoundly transformative. They do not speak to the restless chatter of the mind, but to the still and knowing heart. We learn to see our thoughts not as rulers to be obeyed, but as clouds drifting through a vast sky. We begin to meet our difficult emotions, not as enemies to be feared, but as messengers, guides carrying lessons that point us back toward healing. Welcome to Insightful Journey. This is your sanctuary, a place where you can rest the mind, nourish the spirit, and remember that there is nothing you need to change about yourself in this moment. Nothing to fix, no role to perform, no one else you need to become. For now, you are simply here, and that is enough. Let these words be like cool water washing gently over you. Allow them to soothe, to soften, and to open something tender inside you. If this path of reflection calls to a deeper part of you, I invite you to return often, subscribe, revisit, and allow this sanctuary to be a reminder of the peace that is your birthright. So, let us begin. Breathe in slowly and deeply. Breathe out, gently releasing. And together, we take our first step. Our journey into peace begins not with seeking, but with looking honestly at what is already here, at the nature of the mind itself. The Buddha's first and most essential teaching was about what is often called suffering, but perhaps a softer word is friction. It is the subtle, persistent sense that something is missing, that life is never quite as it should be. It is the restlessness that arises when we cling desperately to pleasure, or when we push away pain. This friction is not a punishment, it is not a failing, it is simply what happens when the mind is untrained, when it resists the natural flow of life. And yet, when we turn toward this friction with gentle curiosity, we discover something extraordinary. This is the doorway to freedom. The very place of discomfort becomes the path to unshakable peace. There is an old story told in the villages of the East, a story of a young woman named Mara, who lived at the foot of a great mountain. Mara was a weaver, and her hands were gifted beyond compare. With every thread she touched, she created tapestries of breathtaking beauty, colors that blazed like the sunrise, patterns as delicate and precise as a spider's web, glistening with morning dew. Her art became her life. Her village celebrated her, and travelers came from distant kingdoms to purchase her work. She was admired, respected, even envied. And slowly, without noticing, Mara began to weave her very identity into the cloth. I am a great weaver, she thought. This is who I am. For a time, this brought her joy. Each finished tapestry filled her with pride, and each word of praise confirmed her worth. But as all things do, this joy began to fade. But with Mara's success came a quiet fear. Each new tapestry was expected to be more beautiful than the last, and the weight of expectation pressed heavily upon her heart. At night she would lie awake, her mind tangled in endless patterns and colors, haunted by the thought that her inspiration might one day vanish. The joy of weaving, once effortless, was now clouded by anxiety. Creation became burdened with comparison. Every thread felt like a test she might fail. Then, one day, a royal messenger arrived at her door. The king himself had heard of Mara's unmatched skill and wished for a tapestry that captured the essence of the entire kingdom, its forest, rivers, mountains, people, and spirit. It was the greatest honor of her life, and it terrified her. Determined to meet this impossible task, Mara built a grand new loom and purchased the finest silk and golden threads. Yet each time she sat before the loom, her hands would tremble. Her mind, once a fountain of ideas, became a storm of doubt. The immensity of the task paralyzed her. The loom remained empty, The threads gathered dust. Her workshop, once alive with laughter and creativity, became a hollow chamber of dread. Mara grew restless and withdrawn. The friction in her mind became a constant torment, an endless cycle of self-judgment, fear, and longing for perfection. One evening, unable to bear the silence any longer, she left her workshop and climbed the mountain path as the sun dipped toward the horizon. At the top, she came upon a small hermitage, home to an old nun known for her quiet wisdom. With trembling voice, Mara poured out her despair. She spoke of her fear, her paralysis, her inability to weave the tapestry the king had asked for. She confessed how the joy she once knew had been replaced by dread. The nun listened silently, her gaze steady, her presence as still as a mountain lake. When Mara's words dissolved into silence, the nun did not give instructions or solutions. Instead, she rose and said gently, "Come, let us watch the sunset." Together they sat on a rock, overlooking the valley. The sky was ablaze with color, brilliant oranges, deep purples, and soft pinks, swirling and shifting as the sun descended. Every moment was a new masterpiece, yet no moment clung to the last. Mara felt something stir within her chest. The nun turned to her with eyes of profound kindness. "You are not the weaver," she said. "You are the loom. Life is the weaver. Joy, sorrow, fear, inspiration, these are only threads, each with their own color. You have tried to weave only with gold, but a tapestry of only one color has no depth. The problem is not that you feel fear. The problem is that you believe you should not." The words sank deep into Mara's bones, like water seeping into dry earth. For the first time in many months, her body softened. The tightness in her shoulders released. She understood she was not her success, nor her failure, nor her fear. She was the space through which life wove its colors. That night, under a sky glittering with stars, Mara walked back down the mountain with a lighter step. The next morning she returned to her workshop. The loom no longer seemed like a cage. She breathed deeply, picked up her threads, and began to weave, not with the pressure of perfection, but with the freedom of presence. Each thread, whatever its color, belonged. Her tapestry no longer needed to be flawless. It only needed to be alive. And so Mara began to weave again. But this time, she wove not for the king, nor for praise, nor for perfection. She simply wove what was in her heart that day. The trembling threads of her fear, the rough texture of her anxiety, but also the deep purple of the sunset she had witnessed, and the soft silver of starlight that had guided her down the mountain. The tapestry she created was unlike any she had made before. It was not flawless, but it was honest. It was alive. And in the act of weaving her whole self, the bright colors and the dark threads alike, Mara found something she had never known before. She found her freedom. Mara's story is, in truth, our story. For the friction, the dukkha the Buddha spoke of is not in the royal commission, nor in the fear of failure itself. The friction lies in clinging, in grasping tightly to an identity, in resisting the full spectrum of what it means to be human. The Buddha's first noble truth points directly to this reality. Life will inevitably bring us moments we would rather avoid. Sickness, loss, disappointment, uncertainty. These are not mistakes in the fabric of life. They are part of the very weave. The second noble truth reveals something even more profound. Our suffering does not arise from these experiences themselves. It arises from our craving, from our thirst for reality to be other than it is. Mara suffered because she longed to be only the perfect weaver. She resisted the threads of fear and doubt, believing they had no place in her tapestry. But this craving, this endless reaching for only the pleasant and fleeing from the unpleasant, is the natural reflex of the untrained mind. We are conditioned to build our identity around successes and strength while hiding away our vulnerability. It is like trying to build a dam in the middle of a rushing river. For a time the walls may hold, but eventually the pressure will build until it becomes unbearable.
The Buddha's wisdom is a radical and liberating invitation. Stop building the dam.
See clearly that it is our craving, our resistance, that creates the pressure we feel. When we chase happiness as though it can be permanent, we are bound for disappointment because everything in life is impermanent. When we run from sadness, we hand it more power over us because what we resist only grows stronger in the shadows. The path of wisdom is not about controlling the river. It is about learning to move with its current, to see every thread, light and dark, as part of the larger whole. This shift is profoundly empowering. It means that the key to peace is not found in rearranging the world outside of us, but in transforming the way we see from within. We cannot stop the river of life from flowing, but we can learn to navigate its waters with grace, with presence, and with wisdom. And how do we begin? Not as monks in the mountains, nor as master weavers of grand tapestry. We begin right where we are, here in the fabric of our ordinary days. The first practice is simple, yet transformative. Become an observer of the friction in your own mind. When you feel the tightening of anxiety in your chest, when a sharp flash of irritation rises unexpectedly, when disappointment settles heavy in your heart, instead of being swept away by the story your mind is spinning, pause, take one conscious breath.
Step back just a little, as if you were a scientist studying a sudden change in the weather.
Name it gently to yourself. This is frustration. This is the feeling of wanting things to be different. This small act of naming and observing creates a sacred space, a space of awareness between you and the storm. And in that space, a seed of freedom begins to grow. In that space of awareness, you are no longer the emotion itself. You are the one who is aware of the emotion. This subtle shift, this quiet recognition, is the beginning of freedom. The next step is curiosity. Beneath every wave of discomfort lies a craving, a thirst. Ask yourself gently, what is the mind longing for in this moment? If you find yourself frustrated in traffic, perhaps the craving is for the road to clear, for time itself to bend to your schedule. If you feel hurt by a friend's words, perhaps the craving is for the past to be rewritten, for those words to have never been spoken. When you begin to see these cravings clearly, do not judge them. See them with the same tenderness you would offer a child who wishes for sunshine on a rainy day. This simple recognition softens the heart. You don't need to fight against the craving. You only need to see it for what it is, a natural but ultimately unskillful reflex of the mind. And then bring this wisdom into the body. Because our resistance does not live in the mind alone, it takes root in our flesh. Notice, is your jaw clenched? Are your shoulders drawn upward? Is your stomach tight? With each exhale, invite these places to soften. Let the breath dissolve the knots of tension, not by force, but by gentle allowing. This is not about making the body relax, but about giving it permission to let go. In these small moments, you are teaching your mind a new way of being. You are learning that it is safe to feel the full spectrum of life, that peace does not require you to resist reality. You are remembering what Mora discovered on the mountain, that you are not the threads of fear or joy, but the loom that holds them all. Notice the gentle rhythm of your breath, a quiet anchor in the river of time. Allow your body to soften. Let the edges of your day melt into this stillness. And if this journey resonates with you, I invite you to return often. This is Insightful Journey, a sanctuary where we continue to walk together, exploring the wisdom that returns us to peace again and again. Now we continue with a truth both profoundly simple and radically transformative, the teaching of impermanence, anatta. The universe is in constant motion. Nothing is fixed. Not the mountains, not the stars, not our bodies, not even our thoughts. Everything that arises will, in time, pass away. At first, we experience this truth with unease. We fear loss. We grieve change. We cling desperately to moments of joy, as if we could freeze them in time, hold them forever in our hands. But the Buddha taught that it is not change itself that causes our suffering. It is our resistance to change. It is the refusal to let life move in its natural rhythm.
Awareness is not a limit.
It is not a threat. It is a doorway into freedom. When we stop fighting the river of change, when we allow it to flow as it always has, something miraculous is revealed. A joy that is not tied to the fleeting, a peace that is not broken by endings. This is the freedom of impermanence, to rest in the truth that every sorrow, every fear, every storm of the heart will also pass, and to see that every moment of beauty, precisely because it is passing, shines with an even deeper brilliance. In a quiet valley nestled between two great mountains, there lived a master potter named Isara. Her work was revered across the land for its elegance and near-perfect form. Her bowls seemed to hum with life, as though the clay itself had been awakened by her touch. Among her students was a young apprentice named Kyle. He was gifted, but impatient. His heart longed to create a flawless pot, one without blemish, without crack, without weakness, a masterpiece that would endure forever. Hour after hour, he labored at the wheel, brow furrowed in fierce concentration. And yet, every time, just as he neared what he thought was perfection, a flaw would appear, a slight asymmetry, a bubble in the glaze, a faint tremor from his own hand. With frustration burning inside him, Kyle would smash the pot to pieces, the shards scattering across the floor of his workshop. The ground soon became a graveyard of his own high expectations. One afternoon, after yet another failed attempt, Kyle sat defeated, watching as his master worked. Isara's hands moved with a joyful ease, as if she were dancing with the clay rather than commanding it. Her touch was gentle, alive, fluid. She shaped a vase of remarkable grace, but as she lifted it from the wheel, her hand slipped, and a jagged crack split down its side. Kyle gasped. He expected despair, perhaps even anger, but instead, Isara smiled. She fetched a small brush and a pot of golden lacquer. With careful strokes, she painted along the fracture, tracing the wound with liquid gold. The crack, instead of being hidden, was transformed into a shimmering vein of light. She placed the vase on a special shelf where dozens of other pieces sat, each mended with gold, each radiant with its own story. This was the art of kintsugi, the art of embracing imperfection, of honoring the cracks rather than concealing them. You are trying to make a pot that denies its own nature, Isara said, her voice soft but steady. Clay comes from the earth. It is fragile. It is meant to change, to crack, and one day to return to dust. To resist this is to fight the clay itself. She held up the golden seamed vase. A pot's life is a journey of transformation. Every crack, every fracture tells its story. The heat of the kiln, the hands that held it, perhaps even a fall to the ground. These are not marks of failure, they are marks of life. Her eyes glimmered with kindness. This vase is not less beautiful because it cracked. The crack has made it unique. The imperfection has become its truth. And true beauty, Kyle, is not the absence of flaws, but the loving embrace of them. Kyle looked down at the pile of broken shards around him. For the first time, instead of seeing failure, he saw possibility. Each fracture was not the end, but the beginning of a new story. Gently, he picked up two pieces and began the patient process of mending, not to hide the break, but to honor it. The story of Isara and the golden seams is a mirror of our own lives. We are all Kyle in some way, striving for perfection, yearning for permanence, wishing to stand outside the flow of time. But life does not offer this. This is the teaching of impermanence. Nothing lasts forever, not our sorrows, not our joys, not even the bodies we call our own. When we resist this truth, we suffer. But when we embrace it, as Isara embraced the crack in the vase, we find a deeper kind of peace, a peace that does not come from clinging to perfection, but from honoring the whole journey. Fractures. We want our bodies to stay young and strong. We long for our relationships to remain in perfect harmony. We wish for moments of happiness to last forever. And when life cracks, when illness arrives, when hearts break, when plans fail, we often see these moments as tragedies, as mistakes to be hidden or overcome. But the wisdom of Inika, impermanence, teaches us something radically different. These cracks are not errors in the design. They are an inevitable, essential part of the journey. The Buddha's teaching on impermanence is a call to see life as it truly is, a continuous, dynamic flow. Everything we can touch, see, or feel, our thoughts, our emotions, even the stars in the heavens, is in constant transformation. Trying to hold on to any of it is like trying to grasp water in your hands. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it slips through your fingers. Our suffering is the tension in that squeeze. When we are caught in a difficult emotion, sadness, anger, grief, it can feel overwhelming, as if it has become who we are. We say, "I am sad, I am angry," as though these passing states have replaced our true self. But impermanence reminds us that this is an illusion. Sadness is not who you are. It is a weather pattern moving through the vast, open sky of your awareness. When we remember this, we can meet pain with less fear. We can let it be here, knowing it will eventually transform like clouds dissolving into clear blue sky. And this understanding transforms not only how we hold sorrow, but how we hold joy. Instead of clinging to happiness with desperate fear of its ending, we can savor it fully with gratitude. We can feel the warmth of the sun on our skin without worrying about the clouds. We can laugh with a friend without fearing the silence that may follow. This is the heart of non-attachment, not a cold attachment, but a wholehearted participation in the dance of life, without trying to control the music. When we live this way, we are freed from the tyranny of the past and the anxiety of the future. The past is a string of moments that have already dissolved. The future is a string of moments that have not yet been born. The only place we ever truly live is here, in this moment, fresh, alive, always new. Peace is found when we learn to rest in this living present, to settle into the dynamic stillness of now. So how do we weave this wisdom of impermanence into our daily lives? The practice is not about collecting ideas, it is about direct felt experience. Begin with the gentle art of paying attention. Choose one simple natural phenomenon and observe it regularly. It might be a tree outside your window, the shifting face of the moon, or even a small houseplant on your desk. Look at it each day, notice its subtle transformations. A new leaf unfurling, a flower blooming and then wilting, the way light touches it differently at dawn, at noon, In this quiet practice, we retrain the mind to see change not as an intrusion, not as a problem to solve, but as the constant, living truth of reality. Impermanence is no longer an idea. It becomes something you feel in your bones. And in that felt experience, you discover freedom. Another practice for living with impermanence is to become a curious observer of your own inner world. Sit quietly for just a few minutes each day. No effort, no striving, simply watch. Imagine you are sitting on the bank of a river. Thoughts and feelings drift past like leaves and twigs carried by the current. Some are heavy and dark, others are light and fleeting. Watch them appear, linger, and notice you are not the thought. You are not the emotions. You are the vast, quiet awareness that watches them come and go. This practice creates space within you, a quiet center untouched by the constant churning of the mind. You can also explore a practice of letting go. At the close of your day, take a few breaths, settle into stillness, and gently review what has unfolded. A moment of frustration, a task completed. With each memory, practice releasing. Place it gently on a leaf and watch it float downstream. Or whisper softly to yourself, "This moment is over. I release." This is not about erasing the past. It is about loosening the grip of clinging, about remembering that the past is complete and you are free to meet the present with openness. When you sit with a loved one, be fully there. Feel the fleeting miracle of the moment. Recognize that this exact encounter will never come again. When we see through the lens of impermanence, every conversation becomes precious, every touch tender, every glance sacred. We love more fully. We forgive more easily. We see the cracks in ourselves and in others, not as flaws to be hidden, but as golden seams, evidence of lives courageously lived. Let us pause here together. Take a slow, deep breath. Fill your lungs completely, and as you release, allow the body to soften, the day to fade, the mind to rest. Here you are, nowhere else you need to be. This moment is enough. And now, we turn toward one of the most subtle and perhaps most liberating of the Buddha's teachings. It is the teaching of anatta, or not self. At first, this can sound strange, even unsettling. It seems to challenge the very foundation of our experience. For most of our lives, we live with a strong sense of I at the center. I am the one thinking these thoughts. I am the one feeling these emotions. I am the one making these choices. We imagine an inner commander, a permanent self steering the ship. But the Buddha invited us to look more closely, to ask, where is this solid I? Can it actually be found? The teaching of not self is not a denial of your existence. It is an invitation to discover something far more spacious, a life free from the burden of clinging to a fixed identity. In a monastery known for its silent gardens, there lived a monk named Jin. Despite years of practice, Jin was tormented by a relentless inner critic. My meditation is shallow. I am not as kind as the others. I will never be enlightened. Day after day, his mind was a river of self-judgment, every thought painting him as inadequate. One day, the abbot of the monastery, a wise old master, called Jin to his chambers. Without a word, he handed him a small, ornate model of a chariot, a masterpiece of craftsmanship. "Tell me, Jin," the abbot asked gently, "what is this?" "It is a chariot, master," Jin replied. "Are you sure?" the abbot asked, his eyes glimmering with mischief. He began to dismantle the model. First, he removed one wheel. "Is this wheel the chariot?" "No, master," Jin answered. He removed the other wheel, the axle, the frame, the decorative canopy. With each piece he placed on the floor, he asked, "Is this the chariot?" And each time Jin gave the same answer, "No, master." Soon, all the parts lay disassembled before them. "Now," said the abbot, "where is the chariot?" Jin looked at the scattered pieces, his brow furrowed, then slowly relaxed. "The chariot," he said softly, "is not one thing. It is a temporary collection of parts working together. The word chariot is just a name we give to this process." The abbot smiled, a deep, knowing smile. "And so it is with the self you worry about," he said. "You search for this Jin who is failing. But where is he? Is he your body? Your body is constantly changing, built of parts that are not you. Is he your thoughts? Your thoughts arise and vanish like passing clouds. Is he your feelings? Your emotions shift like weather patterns in the sky. What you call self is like this chariot, a collection of changing processes: body, feelings, perceptions, thoughts, and consciousness. We give this collection a name, a story, and then we mistake the story for a solid, permanent thing. But there is no unchanging I sitting in the driver's seat. There is only the flow of life unfolding moment by moment. Jin sat in stunned silence. The heavy cloak of self-judgment began to loosen. If there was no fixed failing self, then who exactly was failing? The voice of the inner critic suddenly seemed less powerful, like the proclamations of a king without a kingdom. He was not a failure, he was a process. And a process cannot fail, it can only unfold. The abbot's teaching strikes at the very heart of anatta. We spend so much of our lives constructing, polishing, and defending a sense of me. We build it out of our achievements, our relationships, our roles, and our beliefs. Then we live inside this constructed identity as if it were a fort. But this fortress is also a prison. It makes us rigid. It makes us fragile. Every challenge, every criticism, every failure feels like a threat to the very foundation of who we are. The teaching of not self is the key that unlocks this prison. It reveals that the self is not a thing to defend, but a living process to be understood. The Buddha described this process through the 5 aggregates, the skandhas: form, rupa, the body, the physical matter of our being; sensations, vedana, the raw experience of contact, pleasure, pain, or neutrality; perceptions, samchan, the mind's interpretation, labeling, and recognition of what is sensed; mental formations, sankhar, thoughts, emotions, habits, intentions, all the currents that shape our actions; consciousness, vijnana, the basic awareness that illuminates the other four. Together, these aggregates weave what we call self, but none of them is permanent, and none of them on its own or together is truly. When we see this clearly, even for a moment, the burden of self begins to loosen. Life becomes less about defending an identity and more about flowing with the process. The abbot invited us to examine each of the 5 aggregates and to ask 3 simple questions. Is this permanent? Is this truly me? Can I control this completely? The answer each time is no. Our bodies grow, age, and change. Our feelings rise and fall like waves. Our thoughts stream in endlessly, unpredictable, and often chaotic. There is no single, stable entity to be found. This realization is not a cause for despair. It is not nihilism. It is freedom. If you are not a fixed identity, then you are not defined by your past mistakes. You are not imprisoned by today's anxiety. You are a river, flowing and alive, never a stagnant pond. The anxious person you believe yourself to be is nothing more than a temporary constellation of thoughts and sensations. The failure you remember is just that, a memory already dissolved. None of these is your permanent essence. And when this truth is seen, it transforms how we see others as well. When we stop clinging to the fixed story of who we are, we stop forcing others into rigid boxes. She is unreliable. We begin to see that others, like us, are complex, changing processes shaped by conditions visible and invisible. This insight is the soil where true compassion grows. We see the humanity of others more clearly, and the heart naturally softens. So how do we taste this truth directly? Not as an idea to believe, but as a reality to experience in the living laboratory of awareness. One direct doorway is the practice of vipassana, insight meditation. Sit comfortably. Let your body be at ease. For a few minutes, simply bring awareness to your body. Feel the rise and fall of your breath. Notice the pressure where you are sitting, a patch of warmth, a cool breeze across the skin. Do not call this my body. See these sensations for what they are, changing phenomena arising in awareness. Now gently turn to your mind. Watch as thoughts appear, like visitors entering and leaving a room. A thought about tomorrow, a memory of yesterday, an image flashing without warning. Label them softly, thinking, remembering, planning. See how they come and go on their own. They are not your thoughts in the sense of being commanded by a central. They are simply mental formations, arising and dissolving. Do the same with feelings. When a wave of calm comes, notice it. When restlessness stirs, notice that too. Whisper to yourself, peace is here. Restlessness is here. See them as weather patterns, passing clouds in the sky of awareness. Not my feelings, just feelings moving through. The purpose of this practice is not to find some hidden self. It is to notice the absence of one.
The absence of a solid, unchanging I controlling the show.
Another simple but powerful practice is to question the sense of I throughout your day. When the thought arises, I want this, or I am angry, or I need to do that, pause gently. Ask yourself, who is this? Look for it.
Can you find it in your body?
Can you locate it in a thought? Each time the search reveals emptiness. And yet, not a cold emptiness, a spaciousness. But it is not a permanent entity. And in that realization, the heavy burden of self begins to dissolve. Finally, practice seeing the interconnectedness of all things. When you eat a piece of fruit, pause and reflect on all the conditions that brought it to you. The warmth of the sun, the rain carried from distant seas, the soil rich with minerals, the farmer who planted the seed, the hands that harvested it, the person who transported it, the shop where it was sold. The fruit is not a solitary object. It is the entire universe in disguise. And so it is with you, your body, your breath, your thoughts. None of them exist independently. Your language, your values, your beliefs are shaped by parents, teachers, culture. Your body is sustained by the food of the earth, the water of the rivers, the air of the sky. When we see this interdependence clearly, the illusion of separation begins to dissolve. you are not a lonely island. You are a wave on the vast ocean of being, inseparable from the whole. This insight leads us naturally to one of the most beautiful and profound teachings of the Buddha, Pradityasamutpada, dependent origination. It reveals that nothing, absolutely nothing, exists on its own. Every object, every person, every thought, every moment arises because of countless other conditions. To see this truth is to dissolve the roots of alienation. From it springs a compassion that is as natural as breathing. There is a story told of a monk named Sela. Longing for a peace untouched by the noise of the world, Sela retreated to a cave high in the mountains. He believed that if he cut off all connection, if he could be alone with only himself, he might discover enlightenment in its purest form. Each morning a villager left a simple bowl of rice at the mouth of his cave. This was his only meal. One day, as Sela prepared to eat, his teacher's words echoed in his memory. Look deeply at any one thing, and you will see the whole universe. He lifted a single grain of rice and began to look. At first, it was only a tiny white object resting in his palm. But as his mind grew still, his vision widened. He saw the farmer who had bent his back under the sun, sowing seeds with calloused hands. He saw the rich, dark soil cradling the roots. He saw the monsoon rains, heavy with water gathered from distant oceans. He saw the golden sun, a blazing star millions of miles away, whose light and warmth had nourished the plant. He saw the workers who harvested the rice, the millers who prepared it, the merchants who carried it, and the villager who cooked it with quiet generosity and placed it at the cave mouth. Even the bowl he held came alive in his vision. He saw the potter shaping the clay, the fire that hardened it, the earth that gave it substance. He saw that the farmer himself could not have worked without the food he ate, food grown by countless other farmers. The more Sela looked, the more the rice dissolved into infinity. The grain was no longer just a grain, it was the whole cosmos woven together. Sunlight, rain, earth, labor, generosity, time. Countless lives and forces converging in this single fragile grain. Tears filled his eyes. In that moment, he saw that his cave was not separate from the world. His breath was not his alone. His life was inseparably tied to all life. There was no independent peace to be found, because he had never been separate. The grain of rice had revealed what the sutras had always whispered, that everything exists only in relationship. That to live is to be woven into an infinite web of being. Sela bowed his head in gratitude before taking his meal. And in that simple act of seeing deeply, the seed of compassion bloomed within him. The rain could not have formed without the ocean, and the ocean could not exist without the rivers. Everything was connected. Sela looked again at his humble bowl of rice and realized it was not just food. It was the sun, the clouds, the earth, the farmers, the merchants, the villager who carried it to his cave.
It was the kindness of countless lives.
A universe in miniature. His quest for a separate, independent peace suddenly seemed absurd. Even in his remote cave, he was never alone. His nourishment, his body, his very breath were gifts from the world he had tried to leave behind. He bowed to the rice bowl, not as a monk eating his meal, but as a man receiving the entire cosmos, and in that bow, his heart opened. What had been a pursuit of solitary purity dissolved into a profound sense of gratitude and connection with all life. Sela's awakening in the cave is the lived truth of dependent origination. This teaching is often captured in a few simple words. When this is, that is. When this is not, that is not. When this arises, that arises. When this ceases, that ceases. It means nothing exists in isolation. Everything is a temporary manifestation of infinite causes and conditions. Just as Sela saw in his grain of rice, so it is with you. The air in your lungs once flowed through ancient forests. The water in your body once danced as clouds, rivers, and oceans. Your language, your thoughts, your very imagination are shaped by generations of ancestors, teachers, writers, and thinkers you may never know. You are not a separate self. You are the living expression of the universe, here and now. The illusion of separation, this belief that there is a fragile me pitted against an indifferent world, is one of the deepest roots of our suffering. It gives rise to loneliness, competition, and fear. But dependent origination reveals this boundary to be a fiction of the mind. There is no me apart from the world. This understanding is the soil of true compassion. When you see that your well-being is woven into the well-being of others, everything shifts. Their joy is your joy. Their suffering is your suffering. When you encounter anger or greed in another, you no longer see a bad person. You see a being caught in a web of painful conditions, perhaps a childhood of trauma or a history of fear or a misunderstanding they could not escape. Your judgment softens into a wish. May they be free from suffering. This does not mean we condone harmful actions. It means we respond with clarity and compassion rather than reactivity and hatred. We act with the understanding that to harm another is, in a very real sense, to harm ourselves. And from this same truth arises a profound realization of our own power. Because everything is connected, nothing we do is insignificant. Every thought, every word, every deed sends ripples outward into the great web of life. A single act of kindness may seem small, but its effects are limitless, echoing far beyond what we can see. A single moment of mindful presence not only transforms your own heart, but changes the energy of the space around you. This is the gift of dependent origination, to see that we are not separate, and therefore we are never powerless. We are not just passive products of conditions. We are active co-creators of the world in every moment. To bring this wisdom of interconnectedness into your heart, you can practice what the monk Sela discovered, the art of deep looking. This is not a rigid meditation posture. It is a way of meeting the world with new eyes. Begin with your food. Before your next meal, pause. Look at the plate before you. Contemplate the journey of what you are about to receive. The warmth of the sun, the gift of the rain, the soil of the earth, the farmer's labor, the transporter's effort, the cook's care. Silently, offer a thought of gratitude for all the invisible hands and forces now nourishing you. This simple practice, done regularly, transforms eating from a mechanical routine into a sacred communion with life itself. Extend this practice outward to the objects around you, the chair you sit on, the clothes you see, the tree that became wood, the cotton that became thread. Imagine the designers, the factory workers, the drivers who delivered it. Each object is a meeting point of countless energies and lives. This is how the mundane dissolves into the miraculous, how the ordinary reveals itself as extraordinary. And perhaps the most transformative practice of all is to apply deep looking to people, especially those who challenge you. When you feel irritation, frustration, or anger towards someone, pause. Instead of focusing on their difficult behavior, contemplate the unseen causes and conditions that may have shaped. What was their childhood like? What hidden fears or wounds might they carry? What pressures weigh on them that you cannot see? This is not about excusing unskillful actions. It is about softening your own heart, seeing the fuller humanity before you. It is an act of compassion that creates space for wisdom, replacing reactivity with understanding. Finally, turn this deep looking inward. Notice the co-arising of your own experience. How a thought can trigger a physical sensation. How a restless night of sleep colors your mood. How a kind word can transform the entire chemistry of your body. See clearly that your inner world too is a web of dependent origination, and with this awareness comes profound freedom. The ability to skillfully nurture the causes and conditions for your own peace. Let us pause now. Feel the air entering your lungs, a gift of the vast atmosphere. Feel the ground beneath you, an offering of the ancient earth. You are supported. You belong. You are part of this magnificent web of being. If this sense of connection brings peace to your heart, I invite you to subscribe to Insightful Journey, where we continue exploring these quiet truths together. And now, having seen that we are not separate, but part of an endless flow, we arrive at a very practical question. How do we navigate this flow of life? The Buddha's answer is beautifully simple. We walk the middle way. This is not a path of compromise or mediocrity. It is the art of living with balance, neither clinging to excess nor falling into deprivation, but discovering the freedom that lies in the harmony between extremes. The middle way is not compromise, it is not half-heartedness. It is a dynamic, intelligent path of balance, a living art that avoids the two extremes that cause so much suffering. The extreme of sensual indulgence, chasing fleeting pleasure, and the extreme of harsh self-mortification, punishing the body in pursuit of liberation. It is the path between grasping and aversion, between being too tight and being too loose. The middle way is the art of living with wisdom and grace, finding a sacred center in every part of life. This was the Buddha's own story. Before his awakening, he lived as Prince Siddhartha, surrounded by every luxury imaginable. Palaces of beauty, fine clothes, endless feasts. Yet despite all of it, he felt a deep emptiness. The happiness of indulgence was fragile, dependent on circumstances, destined to fade. So he left the palace and turned to the opposite extreme. He became a wandering ascetic, denying himself every comfort. He starved his body, slept on beds of thorns, held his breath until nearly fainting. For 6 years he pushed himself to the edge of death, but enlightenment did not come. His body weakened. His mind grew clouded. One day collapsed by a river. He overheard a musician teaching a student to tune a sitar. The string, the musician said, must not be too tight, or it will break. And it must not be too loose, or it will not play. The perfect note is found in the middle. That very day, a village girl named Sujata, seeing his fragile state, offered him a bowl of rice milk. His ascetic companions were horrified, believing he had abandoned the path. But Siddhartha accepted. The food nourished his body, calmed his mind, and gave him strength. With this restored balance, he sat beneath the Bodhi tree, resolved not to rise until he had discovered the truth. And it was from this centered, steady place, not too tight, not too loose, that he awakened to enlightenment. The Buddha's life shows us the way to peace is not found in extremes. Indulgence makes the mind restless, always chasing the next pleasure. Harsh denial makes the mind rigid and bitter, a kind of self-hatred disguised as discipline. The middle way is different. It is a path of kindness and wisdom. It applies to every part of our lives. Consider our relationship with the body. On one side, we neglect it, feeding it poorly, depriving it of rest, numbing it with excess. On the other side, we obsess over it, chasing impossible perfection, punishing it with relentless exercise or harsh restriction. The middle way honors the body as a precious vessel for our journey. It means nourishing it with wholesome food, giving it rest, moving it with joy instead of aggression.
It is about listening deeply to the body's quiet wisdom.
The same principle applies to our effort in life. One extreme is laziness, drifting without energy, letting opportunities pass. The other is overexertion, burning ourselves out with endless striving and perfectionism. The middle way is steady effort, like the sitar string, tuned to the note that sustains, not forcing, not collapsing, but showing up with consistent, balanced energy. It applies to our relationships. Too tight, and we cling, trying to control others. Too loose, and we withdraw, neglecting connection. The middle way is love without possession, care without control. It applies to our work, our speech, our practice, balance in all things. This is the middle way, not compromise, but harmony. Not mediocrity, but freedom. Sometimes we push ourselves relentlessly, driven by ambition or fear, until we collapse into exhaustion. This is the tight string. Other times we slip into lethargy and procrastination, avoiding challenge, numbing discomfort. This is the loose string. The middle way is about cultivating right effort, a steady, balanced energy. It is knowing when to strive and when to soften. It is working with diligence, but without frantic tension. It is resting with intention, but without guilt. This balance is not a fixed point. It is not something we achieve once and then forget. It is a living dance, moment to moment, breath to breath. The middle way also guides our emotional life. We often swing between two extremes, the tightness of suppression, denying, numbing, or pushing away our feelings, the looseness of indulgence, being swept away by every mood, drowning in anger, sadness, or joy. The middle path is mindfulness. It is the art of being with our emotions, acknowledging them, allowing them to exist, and watching them with calm awareness. Not clinging, not resisting, but witnessing, like clouds drifting across the sky. This is the art of being neither too tight nor too loose with your own heart. To walk the middle way is to become a student of balance, a master of the art of living. It requires ongoing awareness and gentle self-correction, like a musician tuning her instrument before each song. The first step is to cultivate inner listening. Before you eat, pause and ask your body, what do I truly need for nourishment? Before you take on another project, ask yourself, do I have the energy for this, or is it time to rest? Before you respond in conversation, ask your heart, what is the most balanced, kind response here?
This inner listening becomes your compass.
Another practice is to notice your patterns of extremism. Do you tend to push yourself into burnout, or do you drift toward avoidance and delay?
Do you lean toward harsh self-criticism or toward leniency that keeps you stuck?
Awareness itself is the first step. When you see your pattern clearly, the door to balance opens. For example, if you notice a tight critical mind, you can practice self-compassion. When the inner critic arises, soften. Whisper to yourself, it's okay. I am doing my best. If you notice a loose, procrastinating mind, you can practice gentle discipline. Take one small, doable step toward your goal. Break the task into pieces, making it lighter to carry. The same principle applies to your spiritual life. There will be days when meditation feels effortless, when the mind settles into stillness with ease, and there will be days when your thoughts race, when even a single minute feels impossible. The middle way is to show up consistently, without judgment, to bring kindness to both the ease and the struggle. To remember that practice itself is not about perfection, it is about presence.
This is the way of balance.
Not too tight, not too loose. A dynamic harmony that sustains us on the path. Don't cling to blissful states, and don't despair when practice feels difficult. Simply offer your gentle attention for 5 minutes or for an hour. The value is not in the result, but in the intention. Not in forcing, but in the gentle, balanced effort. Remember the sitar string. Throughout the day, ask yourself, am I too tight or too loose right now? This question can meet you anywhere in your posture, in your breathing, in the way your hands grip the steering wheel, or in how your mind holds a problem.
Often you will notice you are holding too tightly.
In that moment, soften, breathe out, let go just a little. This gentle retuning, moment by moment, is the practice of the middle way. It is how we make music with our lives. So pause with me now. Breathe into balance. Feel your breath, not forced, not shallow, but just right. Feel your body, not rigid, not collapsed, but gracefully present. This is the middle. This is peace. And if finding this center speaks to you, I invite you to subscribe to Insightful Journey and let us continue walking this balanced path together.
From this place of balance, we open the other wing of the bird.
For the wisdom of Buddhism is one wing, and compassion is the other. Both are needed to fly. We now turn to the practice of metta, loving kindness. Not a sentimental sweetness, not a passive emotion, but the active, intentional cultivation of unconditional goodwill, a radiant warmth of heart that we can extend to ourselves, to others, and to all of life. Metta is medicine. It softens anger, it dissolves resentment, it eases fear, it heals self-criticism. It is the tender art of tending to the garden of the heart so that kindness may bloom. There is a story told of a monk named Vimal. He lived in a quiet forest monastery. Vimal was diligent in his studies, disciplined in his meditation. Outwardly, he was a devoted practitioner, but inwardly his heart was hard. He was quick to find fault in the other monks. This one too loud, that one too lazy, another too proud. And hardest of all, he was cruel to himself. Every small mistake, every restless sitting, was met with a storm of inner criticism. His mind was a battlefield, and though he practiced earnestly, he was becoming exhausted and bitter. One day his teacher, an old master with a gentle smile, called him over. "Vimo," he said, "your mind is like a parched field where nothing can grow. You water it only with the salt of judgment." The master paused, then gave an instruction that surprised him. Vimo frowned. "Master, this sounds foolish. How can repeating empty words help me? What I need is more discipline, not less." The old master's eyes softened. "The hardness of your heart, Vimal, is your greatest lack of discipline. Do as I say." Reluctantly, Vimal began the practice. For the first few days, he felt foolish. He muttered the phrases through clenched teeth, his mind screaming in protest. "May I be happy. I am miserable. May I be at peace. I am at war." The words felt like lies, hollow and absurd. But he had promised his teacher, so he continued. Days passed, and then, slowly, something shifted. Watching them, something stirred in Vimal's chest, faint but warm. Later that day, when he whispered, "May I be happy," the words felt a little less like lies. He kept walking, kept repeating. He began to notice small things: the sunlight filtering through the canopy, the damp earth rich with fragrance, the distant song of water over stone. One day, he saw another monk stumble and drop a heavy stack of firewood. His first instinct was to judge, clumsy. But then, unbidden, a new thought arose. May he be at ease. Surprised, he walked over, helped gather the wood, and for the first time looked into his fellow monk's eyes with a genuine smile. Still, his main practice was for himself. May I be happy. May I be at peace. The words became smoother, less forced. He began to feel a sliver of the peace he was wishing for. He realized that for years he had treated himself as an enemy. This practice was the first time he had ever actively offered himself kindness. The hardness of his heart began to thaw like a frozen river softening under spring sun. One day his teacher found him by the stream. Vimal no longer clutched the stone. He simply sat, watching the water flow. His face was soft, his eyes "The field is no longer parched, is it?" the master asked. Vimal bowed, his heart full of quiet gratitude. "No, master. The rain has finally come." The meaning of Vimal's story, Vimal's awakening, shows the transformative power of metta practice. It is a kind of mental training that reshapes our habitual responses of anger, judgment, and fear. The Buddha taught, just as a farmer cultivates the soil to grow crops, we can cultivate our minds to grow the wholesome qualities of love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. And the foundation of this cultivation is loving kindness. Metta is the sincere wish for the well-being of a being without expectation of reward. It is a love that is unconditional and boundless. The practice begins, perhaps surprisingly, with ourselves. This is not selfishness, it is necessity. We cannot offer to others what we have not first planted in our own hearts. Many of us find it easier to wish well for others than for ourselves. Yet inside we live with a harsh critic who lashes us with judgment for every imperfection. Directing loving kindness toward ourselves is often the most difficult and therefore the most essential step. It is an act of radical self-acceptance, a gentle hand on the wounds that cause us to lash out at the world. When we can hold ourselves tenderly, we naturally soften toward others. From this foundation, the practice expands outward, first to a loved one or benefactor, someone who easily inspires warmth. Then to a neutral person, a shopkeeper, a bus driver, someone you know by sight, but not by name. And then, the most challenging step, extending loving kindness to a difficult person, someone with whom you feel anger or resentment. This is not about excusing their actions, nor about forcing yourself to feel affection. It is about seeing their shared humanity, about recognizing that just like you, they too wish for happiness, and just like you, they too suffer. This step stretches the heart beyond its comfort zone. It dissolves walls of hostility and plants seeds of compassion. Loving kindness is a profound practice of release. It is letting go of the poison of our own anger, not for another's sake, but for our own. It is the recognition of another's humanity and the wish that they may be free from the suffering that drives their harmful actions. Finally, the practice expands to include all beings, without exception. This vast, boundless intention dissolves the walls of us and them, connecting us to the entire web of life with a heart of universal love. Metta is not just a meditation, it is a way of living. It reshapes how we speak, how we listen, how we act in the world. And to begin, you do not need a forest path or a stone in your hand. You only need a quiet moment and a willing heart. A gentle metta practice. Find a comfortable position where you can remain undisturbed for a few minutes. Close your eyes if it feels natural. First, bring awareness to your own being. Perhaps place a hand on your heart, a small gesture of warmth toward yourself. Then silently repeat a few simple phrases of kindness, slowly, like a soft inner lullaby. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I live with ease. Do not worry if you don't feel a great wave of love. The purpose is not to force emotion, it is to plant a seed. The intention is what matters. If the mind wanders, guide it back with patience. If resistance or feelings of unworthiness arise, simply notice them with kindness. You can even whisper to that resistance, "May you also be at peace." After spending time with yourself, bring to mind someone you love, a good friend or a benefactor. Picture them in your heart's eye. Feel their presence. Offer the same phrases to them. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you live with ease. Let the natural warmth you feel flow with the words. Gradually, as your practice deepens, you can extend these wishes further. To a neutral person, a stranger, a shopkeeper, someone you see but do not know. To a difficult person, someone with whom you feel tension. And finally, to all beings everywhere, human and animal, near and far, carrying metta into daily life. This practice is not confined to meditation. It can flow into your everyday moments. When standing in line, silently wish well for the person ahead of you. When an ambulance passes, send prayers of safety and healing. When you read difficult news, extend compassion to all those touched by it. In this way, ordinary moments become extraordinary acts of connection. Passive observation transforms into active compassion. Be patient with this practice. It is like learning to play an instrument. Some days the heart feels open and radiant. Other days it feels closed or heavy. That is natural. All that matters is that you show up, day by day, watering the seed of kindness. Trust that in time, your inner landscape will bloom with warmth, an unshakable love that can embrace yourself and the whole world. As the warmth of loving kindness begins to permeate our being, it melts the layers of judgment and fear that obscure our true nature. This leads us to one of the most beautiful and encouraging teachings in the Buddhist tradition. The truth that our fundamental awareness is inherently pure, luminous. The Buddha described the natural mind as a clear sky. Thoughts, emotions, and memories are passing clouds. No matter how heavy the storm, no matter how fierce the winds of fear or anger, they never stain the sky itself. The sky remains vast, open, and untouched. This teaching invites a profound shift in perspective. It reminds us that peace is not something we need to manufacture, but something we uncover, something that has been quietly waiting beneath the turbulence of our thoughts. There is a beloved story told in the East of a poor traveler. He was weary from the road, dressed in rags that offered little shelter from the cold. His stomach ached with hunger, and his mind was a tangle of worry about where his next meal would come from. He saw the world through the lens of lack. He saw himself as cursed, as life's most unfortunate victim. One day, exhausted, he fell asleep by the roadside. By chance, a wealthy merchant and old friend came upon him. The merchant's heart was filled with compassion at the sight of his suffering. In his pocket, he carried a priceless diamond, a jewel of flawless brilliance, capable of transforming his friend's life forever. Not wanting to wake him and cause alarm, the merchant quietly sewed the jewel deep into the hem of the traveler's tattered coat. With a silent blessing, he went on his way. The traveler awoke, stretched his aching limbs, and felt the same old hunger gnaw at his belly. He continued his life of poverty, completely unaware of the treasure he carried. For years he wandered from town to town, begging for scraps of food and a place to sleep. He cursed his fate and envied the wealthy, never knowing that he too was rich beyond measure. The diamond traveled with him through dust and rain, through cities and forests, its dazzling brilliance hidden by a thin layer of cloth. Many years later, by chance, he crossed paths again with his merchant friend. The merchant was shocked to see him still living in misery. "My friend," he cried, his voice full of both sorrow and disbelief, "why are you still living like this? I gave you a priceless jewel years ago. It should have been more than enough to sustain you all your life." The traveler looked at him, bewildered. "You gave me nothing," he muttered, his voice heavy with resignation. The merchant knelt down, took hold of the hem of his old coat, and carefully cut the stitches. From the cloth fell the diamond, exploding in the sunlight into 1,000 brilliant rays. The traveler stood speechless. He had been a rich man all along, yet he had lived as a pauper because he never knew the treasure he carried. This story is our story. The diamond is the luminous awareness within each of us, our Buddha nature. We may wander in poverty of spirit, weighed down by fear, shame, or despair. We may believe ourselves to be broken or unworthy, but beneath it all, untouched and unblemished, there shines an awareness that is clear, vast, and pure. The treasure has always been within us. The work of practice is simply to remember. This story is a perfect allegory for our own human situation. The Buddha taught that within each of us, sewn into the very fabric of our being, is a Buddha nature, a nature as pure, brilliant, and indestructible as the diamond. It is our innate capacity for wisdom, for boundless compassion, for unshakable peace. This core of our being cannot be damaged by trauma. It cannot be stained by mistakes. It cannot be diminished by confusion. It is always here, whole, complete, untouched. The problem is, like the traveler, we do not recognize it. We mistake the tattered coat of our anxious thoughts and stormy emotions for who we are. We identify with our self-critical stories. I am anxious. I am unworthy of love. I am broken. And so we live in a kind of spiritual poverty, completely unaware of the immense wealth that lies within our own hearts. The spiritual path is not about acquiring something new. It is not about becoming someone else. It is about discovering the jewel that has always been there. It is the practice of turning inward and recognizing the luminous awareness that has been silently witnessing every moment of our lives. This awareness is not your thoughts. It is the knowing of thoughts. It is not your sadness. It is the presence that feels the sadness arise and pass. It is the calm, unchanging sky that holds the ever-changing weather of your life. To recognize this nature is profoundly healing. It is the ultimate act of self-love. It means you do not have to fix yourself. You are not a problem to be solved. You are a treasure waiting to be discovered. The work is not about becoming perfect. It is about gently removing the layers of mud, fear, conditioning, mistaken identity that hide the brilliance of your own heart. This is an extraordinarily optimistic view of humanity. The obscurations of greed, anger, and illusion, what the Buddha called the kleshas, are like clouds. They are not the sky. They are temporary and can disperse. Your true nature is the vast, clear sky, open, luminous. To experience this luminous nature for yourself is to shift from a life of frantic doing to a life of restful being. This practice requires less effort and more trust. It is the art of noticing the sky behind the clouds. One direct way is to pay attention to the spaces between things. Sit quietly and follow your breath. But instead of focusing only on the inhalation and the exhalation, bring your awareness to the tiny pause at the end of each breath, that moment after the exhale, before the inhale begins. It is just a fraction of a second, but in that gap, there is pure stillness. No thought, no effort, just quiet, alert presence.
Rest there, even for a moment.
This pause is a doorway, a glimpse into the spacious, luminous nature of mind. You can also practice by listening to silence. Find a quiet place and simply listen. At first, you will notice external sounds, the wind, a bird, the hum of a distant machine. But if you listen more deeply, you will begin to notice the silence that surrounds and holds. That silence is not empty. It is alive, spacious, and luminous. It is the same silence that holds your thoughts and emotions. To rest in that silence is to touch the diamond that has always been with you. To uncover the diamond in the coat, we need a steady and reliable tool. That tool is mindfulness. We have touched upon mindfulness throughout our journey, but it is so central that it deserves a deeper exploration. Mindfulness, or sati, is the art of paying attention to the present moment intentionally and without judgment. It is the simple yet profound practice of waking up from the dream of compulsive thinking and arriving fully in the life that is unfolding here and now. Yet mindfulness does not work alone. It is paired with its indispensable partner, concentration, or samadhi. Mindfulness is the placement of attention. Concentration is its stability, its collectedness. Together they are like two wings of a bird. With both we soar into the clear sky of awareness. The archer metaphor. Imagine a skilled archer preparing to shoot an arrow at a distant target. Around her the crowd is murmuring. The wind is shifting. The memory of a past failure tugs at her mind. If her attention is scattered, lost in the crowd, lost in the wind, lost in memory, her aim will falter. But if she steadies her breath, stills her mind, and places her attention fully on the target, the arrow flies true. Mindfulness is the act of aiming, placing attention where it needs to be. Concentration is the steadiness that keeps it there, no matter the distractions. Everyday mindfulness. This is not only the archer's art, it is ours.
When you drink a cup of tea, can you truly taste it?
Not lost in thought, not planning, not remembering, but present with warmth, aroma, flavor. When you walk, can you feel the gentle rhythm of your steps, the earth meeting your feet? When you breathe, can you feel the rise and fall, the quiet miracle of life moving through you? This is mindfulness, placing attention on the living moment. And with concentration, that attention no longer slips and scatters. It deepens, steadies, and the gift of mindfulness. Through mindfulness, we discover that the present moment, ordinary and simple, holds extraordinary treasures. The sound of a bird, the texture of sunlight on skin, the soft weight of your own breath. Each moment becomes alive, and as mindfulness grows, the restless mind begins to settle. The storm of compulsive thinking quiets. Awareness opens like a clear sky after rain. This is why the Buddha called mindfulness the direct path to freedom. Yet to succeed, the archer must bring her entire being into this singular present moment, her breath steady and deep, her gaze soft yet unwavering. If her mind drifts to the past, to the sting of a missed shot, a subtle tension enters her arm and the arrow flies astray. If she leaps into the future, dreaming of glory or fearing shame, her focus blurs and her aim falters. In the instant of release, there is no archer, no target, no path, no future. There is only the pure flight of the arrow. This is the state of collected, mindful awareness that Buddhist practice cultivates. Most of the time, however, our minds are the opposite of that archer. Our energy is scattered in 1,000 directions. We drive our car while replaying yesterday's argument. We eat lunch while composing tomorrow's email. We sit with someone we love while secretly wandering through a labyrinth of worries. We are rarely where we are. This state of distraction is a kind of psychic sleepwalking. We are not living our lives, we are living in a simulation of them, and this is one of the root causes of our suffering. It robs us of the richness and beauty of the present, and it fuels our anxiety. As our minds churn endlessly over problems long past or futures that may never come. Mindfulness is the gentle but firm practice of waking up from this dream. It is the act of returning again and again from the scattered worlds of past and future to the living reality of now. This is the heart of Buddhist meditation. It is the training that allows us to see the workings of our own minds with clarity and compassion, rather than being helplessly swept along. When you are mindful, you begin to see your thoughts as just thoughts, passing events. like clouds drifting through the sky, not as absolute truths, not as commands you must obey. You can notice a thought of anger arise, and instead of becoming it, simply note, anger is here. This creates a sacred pause. In that pause, there is freedom. In that space, you can choose to respond with wisdom and kindness rather than react from blind habit. This is how we gently untangle ourselves from destructive patterns. And mindfulness is not only wise, it is profoundly kind. The instruction is not simply to pay attention, but to pay attention without judgment. This is crucial, because so often we are our own harshest critics. When we try to meditate, the mind might hiss, "You're doing this wrong. You can't even sit still. You're failing." But mindfulness teaches us to meet even these thoughts with gentleness. You simply notice judging is, and then, with the same kindness you might use to guide a lost puppy home, you gently return your attention to the breath. Every time you do this, you are not failing. You are performing an act of profound self-compassion. As mindfulness strengthens, so does concentration. A mindful mind is a collected mind. Just as the archer gathers all her energy into a single point, the meditator learns to gather attention onto one simple object, most often the breath. As attention steadies, the monkey mind begins to calm. It is like a jar of muddy water left undisturbed. At first it is cloudy, swirling with sediment, but when left still, the mud settles and the water becomes clear and luminous. So it is with the mind. When it rests in mindfulness and concentration, deep insights arise, not as philosophical ideas, but as lived realities, impermanence, not self, interconnection. These truths reveal themselves directly. This is why mindfulness and concentration are called the path to wisdom. They are not mere relaxation techniques. They are master tools for liberating the heart and mind. Mindfulness of breathing. Anapanas, the foundation for cultivating mindfulness and concentration, is the practice of mindful breathing. You can do this anywhere, but especially at the beginning, it helps to choose a quiet place where you will not be disturbed. Find a posture that embodies both dignity and ease. This could be on a cushion, cross-legged, or simply sitting upright in a chair with both feet resting on the ground. Keep your spine upright, alert, awake. Let your body soften, relaxed, at ease. You may gently close your eyes or keep them softly open with a downward gaze. Take 3 slow, deep breaths. With each exhale, consciously release any obvious tension in your body and mind. Then allow your breath to return to its natural rhythm. Do not control it. Do not shape it. Just let the body breathe itself. Now choose a place to anchor your awareness. For many, it is the tip of the nostrils, where you can feel the cool air enter and the slightly warmer air leave. For others, it is the abdomen, rising and falling gently with each breath. Wherever you choose, rest your attention there. Feel the raw sensation of breathing, moment by moment. Inevitably, the mind will wander. It will drift into plans, memories, worries, or fantasies. This is not failure. It is simply the nature of the untrained mind. The very moment you notice that your attention has wandered, that is success, that is mindfulness. Gently acknowledge where the mind has gone. Thinking, planning, remembering. Then, with the same kindness a parent shows a child who has strayed, gently guide your attention back to the breath. This returning again and again is the heart of practice. Each time you return, you strengthen the muscle of mindfulness. Each time you return, concentration grows. That is the whole practice. Simple, but not always easy. And the quality that matters most is not perfection, but kindness, patience, gentleness, and compassion toward yourself. Informal mindfulness, everyday practice. Mindfulness does not belong only to the cushion. It can infuse the smallest acts of daily life. When you wash the dishes, simply wash the dishes. Feel the warmth of the water. Notice the smooth surface of the plates. Watch the rainbow shimmer of the soap bubbles. When you walk from your car to your office, feel the soles of your feet pressing against the earth. Notice the rhythm of your steps. When you drink tea or coffee, taste it fully. Feel the warmth against your lips, the aroma rising, the flavor unfolding across your tongue. When you speak with a loved one, let your full attention rest on them, not rehearsing what to say, not drifting elsewhere, but really being there. Each of these moments is a doorway into presence. Each is a chance to wake up from sleepwalking and step back into the miracle of life unfolding here and now. As mindfulness deepens, we begin to notice something with startling clarity: the patterns of our own clinging. We see how we hold tightly to ideas, to expectations, to identities, to pleasure, and even, at times, to our own pain. In Buddhism, this is often spoken of as nekkhamma. Sometimes it is translated as renunciation, but perhaps more helpfully, it can be understood as non-attachment. Non-attachment does not mean cold detachment. It does not mean abandoning joy or withdrawing from life. It does not demand that we give up all possessions or sever all relationships. Instead, it points to something subtler and far more liberating. It is the wise and compassionate release of our inner grip. It is allowing life to flow without our constant interference, control, and fear. It is discovering that true freedom is not found in getting more, but in needing less. The raft parable. There is a powerful parable told by the Buddha. A man was traveling through a dangerous wilderness and came upon a wide, treacherous river. The waters were strong, the currents hidden and deadly. There was no bridge, no boat, and behind him, wild animals prowled. He knew he could not remain where he was. So using his ingenuity, he gathered branches, vines, and logs. With great effort, he built a simple raft. Climbing onto it, he paddled across the rushing current. With determination, he reached the far shore safely. Standing on the other side, he was filled with gratitude. His raft had saved his life. He looked back at it bobbing gently in the shallows and thought, "This raft has been so useful to me. I worked hard to build it. It would be wasteful to leave it behind. I might need it again someday." So he hoisted the heavy waterlogged raft onto his shoulders and carried it inland. But the far shore was a land of beauty, rolling meadows, wild flowers, tall hills, and open skies. The man could not enjoy any of it. The raft weighed him down. He struggled under its burden. It caught in the trees, scraped against rocks, and made it impossible for him to climb the hills and see the views. The very thing that had once been his salvation had now become his prison. This is how clinging works in our lives. The tools, beliefs, and strategies that once protected us can become heavy burdens if we refuse to let them go. A relationship that once gave joy may, if held too tightly, become suffocating. An identity that once gave strength may, if clung to, prevent us from growing. Even our spiritual practices, like the raft, can become prisons if we mistake the finger for the moon, the method for the goal. The Buddha's teaching is simple. Once you have crossed the river, leave the raft. Carry the wisdom, but not the weight. Letting go is not rejection, it is freedom. It is the courage to step into the open fields of life unburdened. The Buddha used this story to ask his disciples, what would a wise person do? A wise person, he explained, would understand the raft's purpose. They would feel gratitude, honor its value, and then leave it by the riverbank, continuing their journey unburdened. The raft, he said, is like the teachings, the practices, even our most cherished insights. They are skillful means, tools to help us cross from the shore of suffering to the shore of freedom. But they are not meant to be clung to as rigid dogmas or shiny new identities. Even the most profound truth can become a burden if we hold it too tightly. This story extends into every corner of our lives. We all build rafts. Rafts of accomplishments, rafts of career, rafts of relationships and identity, even rafts of pain and victimhood. For a time, these rafts can serve us well. They protect, they carry, they sustain. But if we cling to them, if we make them fixed parts of our identity, they stop being vehicles of liberation. They become burdens, weighing us down, preventing us from walking freely into the open fields of life. The wisdom of letting go is the natural fruit of seeing impermanence and not self. If everything is changing, what can truly be held? If there is no solid separate self, who is doing the holding? Attachment is the attempt to build a permanent home in a world that is always moving, always flowing. It is a recipe for struggle, for disappointment. We cling to outcomes, believing our happiness depends on things going a certain way. This makes us rigid, fearful, unable to bend with life's natural flow. We cling to people, not with open hands but with clenched fists of possession and control. Ironically, this suffocates the very love we want to protect. We cling to our beliefs and opinions, building fortresses in the mind. From inside those walls, we wage wars against anyone who dares to see differently. And strangely, we even cling to suffering. Pain can become so familiar that it defines us. Our story of trauma, of victimhood, becomes our identity. The thought of releasing that story feels terrifying, as though without it, we would not know who we are. Letting go is the practice of gently loosening this clenched fist of the mind. It is not cold indifference. It is not bypassing pain or pretending we do not care. On the contrary, letting go arises from love and trust. You can love someone more deeply when you are not attached to them, fulfilling your idea of who they should be. You can work more joyfully when you are not desperately attached to a particular outcome. You can hold your own beliefs lightly, which allows you to listen to others with openness rather than defensiveness. Non-attachment is not about caring less. It is about caring so fully that you are willing to release your ego's agenda and allow life to be as it is. It is a profound act of trust in the unfolding of the universe. This lesson is especially vital in spiritual practice. We can become attached to meditation techniques, to teachers, or to the memory of blissful states. Perhaps we have one luminous meditation and then spend weeks trying to force it to return. Instead of freedom, we create frustration. The Buddha's invitation is simple. Do not cling even to the practice itself. Use the raft, cross the river, then let it go. In this release, we discover a peace that is flexible, resilient, and free. The raft parable reminds us, hold your practices lightly. They are tools. Use them skillfully, but do not turn them into possessions. The goal is not to become a good meditator. The goal is to be free. How to practice letting go in daily life. It begins with noticing the feeling of clinging. Attachment has a signature. It feels like tightness, like holding your breath. It is the mind clutching as if for dear life. When you sense this tension in body or mind, you can begin the practice. One method is a simple visualization of release. Close your eyes. Imagine placing the worry, resentment, or expectation into the palm of your hand. Look at it with kindness, without judgment. Then imagine gently opening your hand and letting the wind carry it away. Or place it on a leaf in a stream and watch it drift downstream, out of sight. Journaling can also help with deeper attachments. Make a list of what you notice yourself clinging to. It may be large, like a career goal, a relationship, or a self-image. Or small, like the need for your desk to be perfectly tidy. For each item, ask gently, what fear lies beneath this attachment? Naming the fear often dissolves much of its power. Then ask, what might freedom feel like if I loosen my grip on this? This turns awareness into possibility. It gives the heart room to breathe. But perhaps the simplest and most continuous practice is the breath itself. Each breath is a living teacher of letting go. You cannot hold on to an exhalation. To breathe is to trust the cycle of release. So, when you feel tense or caught in attachment, bring awareness to your out-breath. As you exhale, silently whisper, let go, or simply release. Let each exhalation be a small surrender, a small act of trust in life. Moment by moment, this practice lightens the load. It loosens the clenched fist of the mind and shows you what it feels like to walk freely, unburdened, on the far shore. The wisdom of letting go is the natural fruit of seeing impermanence and not self. If all is changing, what can we truly hold? If there is no fixed self, who is there to do the holding? Letting go is not indifference. It is trust. It is the willingness to place down the raft and walk into the open fields of life unburdened, light. Closing pause. Let us pause here before we bring our journey to a close. Take a slow, deep breath in. Feel the stillness of this moment, and as you exhale, release any effort. Simply rest. You are here. You are enough. And this is peace. If this path has been a refuge for you, I invite you to subscribe to Insightful Journey, ensuring this sanctuary is always here for you whenever you need to return to the quiet. Now, as we near the end of our journey together, we arrive at a teaching often called the deepest in the Buddhist tradition, the wisdom of emptiness. The word emptiness can sound cold, frightening, even nihilistic, as if it means nothing matters, nothing exists. But this is a misunderstanding. In Buddhism, emptiness does not mean not existent. It means empty of a separate, independent, intrinsic self. It is the ultimate expression of the interconnection we have been exploring all along. It is the radical insight that nothing exists in isolation. Everything is what it is, only because of everything else. Far from despair, this realization dissolves fear and attachment. It reveals a reality that is vibrant, miraculous, and fundamentally free. The story of Anatta. There was once a young monk named Anatta who was deeply troubled by this teaching of emptiness. He would listen to the discourses, but his mind resisted. How can my hand be empty? He thought, holding it up. I can see it. I can feel it. It is solid. It is here. To Anatta, the world appeared as a collection of solid, separate things. The teaching of emptiness felt like a denial of what his senses told him. His teacher, a wise nun named Prajna, saw his struggle. One day, she handed him a simple clay cup. "Tell me about this cup," she said. Anatta described it carefully. "It is made of clay. It is hard. It has a handle. It can hold water." Prajna smiled. "But where is the cupness?" she asked. "Let us look together." She guided him gently. "Is the clay the cup? No, the clay was once only earth. Is the water inside the cup the cup? No, that is separate. Is the shape the cup? The shape was given by the potter's hands and mind." Then Prajna invited him into deeper contemplation. "This cup is made entirely of non-cup elements. For it to exist, it needs the clay. The clay needs the soil and the rain. The rain needs the clouds. The clouds need the vast ocean. The potter needed food for strength, and that food came from the sun and soil. This cup contains the entire universe. It is empty of being just a cup. And because it is empty, it is full of everything." Look at that wave, Prajna said. "It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It has a shape, a height, a power. It is clearly a wave. But can you find anything in it that is not the ocean? The wave is empty of a separate self. It is simply the ocean waving. It arises from the sea, plays for a time, and returns to the sea. Because it is empty of a separate self, it is full of the whole ocean." In that instant, something shifted in Anatta's heart. He looked down at his hand again. He no longer saw a separate solid thing. He saw a temporary manifestation of the entire universe. He saw his parents and ancestors in his hand. He saw the sun that ripened the food he had eaten. He saw the water that nourished him, the air that sustained him, the earth that held him. His hand was empty of being only his hand. And because of that, it was full of life itself. This is the liberating paradox of emptiness. Emptiness is fullness. Because nothing exists alone, everything contains everything. To see this truth is to walk free of fear and grasping. What we thought was solid and separate dissolves into a luminous web of connection. And in that vastness we discover that nothing is missing. The fear Anatta felt around the word emptiness dissolved into a sense of profound connection and awe. The wisdom of emptiness, shunyata, is the ultimate antidote to the delusion of separateness. We walk through the world believing in a solid me surrounded by a collection of solid others and things. This perception becomes the root of our clinging as we grasp at what we want, and the root of our aversion as we push away what we fear. But emptiness reveals that these lines we draw, me, you, mine, yours, are mental illusions. In reality, everything arises together in a seamless, unified field. The Heart Sutra states, "Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. This means that the form of the wave is inseparable from its emptiness of being separate from the ocean. The form of the cup depends on its emptiness of an independent existence. They are not two truths, they are two sides of the same truth. When we glimpse this, our relationship with life changes. A painful emotion arises. Instead of seeing it as a solid, terrible thing happening to me, we see it as a wave of energy arising from countless causes and conditions, empty of a fixed core. Seeing its emptiness, we are no longer overwhelmed. We can let it move through us like weather across the sky. A moment of joy arises. Instead of clinging to it desperately, afraid it will vanish, we savor it deeply. We know it is transient, the gift of interdependence. We can love it without needing to possess. This is not dry philosophy. It is a felt sense of liberation. When we see emptiness, we become fearless. What is there to lose when nothing was ever separate to begin with? What self is there to defend when no fixed self exists at all? With this vision, life becomes a dance. We engage fully, yet lightly open, loving, spacious. We are no longer a frightened ego defending its tiny borders. We become the open space in which the whole dance of life practices for touching emptiness. To touch this wisdom, we practice gently deconstructing our experience. It is not complicated. It is simply a shift in perception. Look around you now. Choose an object, a lamp, a book, a table. First, see the object as your mind normally labels it. Table. Now look more deeply. If it is wood, see the tree. See the forest. See the sunlight that fed the tree, the rain that watered it, the soil that nourished it. See the logger who cut the tree, the carpenter who shaped the wood, the tools they used, and the people who forged those tools. Look long enough, and you see, this table is not just a table. It is a meeting point for the whole cosmos. It is empty of being a separate, independent table, and because it is empty, it is full of the entire universe. You can practice the same contemplation with your own body. See that it is made of non-body elements, the food you have eaten, the water you have drunk, the air you are breathing, the genes of your ancestors. This body is not yours. It is a temporary loan from the universe, not to diminish its preciousness, but to deepen it. You can also practice with emotions. When anger arises, instead of becoming it, investigate it. Where does it live? In the body, heat in the chest, tension in the jaw, energy in the stomach. Notice the thoughts that feed it. See that anger is not one solid thing. It is a process, a confluence of sensations and thoughts arising from causes and conditions. When you see this, its grip weakens, its power dissolves. This is the liberating gift of emptiness. It dissolves illusions, softens clinging, and reveals life as vast, luminous, and interconnected. To see emptiness is to be free. When you see the emptiness of things, they no longer command you. The ultimate practice of emptiness is to rest in open awareness, without labels, without judgments. In that stillness, you don't think about emptiness. You simply are the spacious awareness in which the interdependent nature of reality shines moment by moment. And this leads naturally to one of the most crucial teachings of the Buddha, karma. Karma is perhaps the most misunderstood concept in the West. It is not a system of cosmic reward and punishment handed down by some external judge. Karma literally means action. And the Buddha clarified what matters most is satana, intention. It is not just what we do, but the will, the choice, the why behind the action that plants the seed. This is profoundly empowering. It means we are not victims of fate. In every moment we hold the power to shape our future by cultivating wholesome intentions in the present. The parable of the two brothers. Long ago, two brothers lived side by side, both farmers, both good men. One year, just before harvest, a violent storm swept through their valley. Their rice fields were flattened. A year's labor destroyed overnight.
The same event, the same loss, but their karma unfolded very differently.
The first brother collapsed into despair. His mind burned with anger and blame. Why does this always happen to me? Life is unfair. He grew bitter. He lashed out at his family. He refused his neighbor's help, twisting their kindness into suspicion. His intentions, rooted in aversion and self-pity, planted seeds of isolation and suffering. The second brother also felt grief. He too stood stunned before the wreckage. But after the wave of sorrow passed, his heart turned. This has happened, he thought. The past cannot be changed. What can I do now? His intention shifted toward wisdom and compassion. He gathered his family. We've lost the crop, but we still have each other. We still have our strength. Then he went to his neighbors, not with envy, but with openness. We have all suffered in this storm, he said. Let us work together to clear the fields. Together we will rise. His intentions, rooted in acceptance and kindness, planted seeds of resilience and community. The storm was the same, but the karma, the inner soil of intention, transformed the outcome. One brother created a private hell of bitterness. The other created a circle of strength and love. This is the essence of karma, not fate, not punishment, but the flowering of our own intentions. To see karma clearly is to recognize that the quality of our lives is not dictated from outside, it is shaped from within, moment by moment, thought by thought, choice by choice. It is the ultimate expression of freedom and responsibility. The Buddha taught that intentions rooted in the three poisons, greed, hatred, and delusion, lead to actions that cause suffering for ourselves and for others. When we act from greed, from grasping and wanting more, we create dissatisfaction. When we act from hatred, from anger and ill will, we create conflict and pain. When we act from delusion, from confusion and not seeing things clearly, we make unskillful choices that lead to regret. Conversely, when our intentions are rooted in their opposites, generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom, our actions naturally bring peace. When we act from generosity, we create joy and connection. When we act from loving kindness, we create harmony and safety. When we act from wisdom, we make skillful choices that open the door to freedom. This is not a metaphysical belief system. You can observe it in your own life every day. Notice how you feel after lashing out in anger versus how you feel after offering a kind word. The results are immediate and tangible. And the most beautiful part of this teaching is that it is never too late. You are not condemned by your past actions. You are not defined by your mistakes. In this very moment, you hold the power to plant a new seed. You can choose a kind thought. You can choose a generous act. You can choose patience instead of reactivity. Each choice plants a seed that changes the trajectory of your life. Karma empowers us to stop being passive victims of circumstance and become the conscious, loving architects of our own experience. Practical ways to work with karma. To work skillfully with karma, we must bring mindfulness to our intentions. One simple yet powerful practice is intention setting. At the beginning of the day, before you rise or as you sip your tea, take a quiet moment. Set a wholesome intention. Today I will practice patience. Today I will listen with an open heart. Today I will be kind to myself. This intention is like a rudder, gently guiding your words and actions toward the good. Throughout the day, practice mindful pauses before you speak. Before you press send, before you react to a trigger, take one conscious breath. In that pause, ask, is what I am about to say or do coming from kindness and clarity, or from fear, anger, or ego? That tiny gap of awareness can make all the difference between creating suffering or creating peace. At day's end, try a gentle karma review, not to judge yourself, not to feel guilt, but simply to learn. Ask yourself, what were the intentions behind my actions today? When did I act from kindness? When did I get caught in reactivity? Each reflection deepens awareness. Each insight plants the seeds for wiser choices tomorrow. And finally, practice the karma of generosity. It need not be about money. You can be generous with your time, with your listening, with a smile, with a word of encouragement. Every act of generosity plant a seed of joy in the giver and the receiver alike. In this way, karma ceases to be an abstract doctrine. It becomes a living truth. Each moment a seed, each intention a choice, each action a ripple shaping the world. And in this recognition, life itself becomes the field of awakening. Every act of giving, no matter how small, when done with the pure wish for another's well-being, is a powerful way to generate good karma. It breaks the spell of self-centeredness. It opens the heart to the joy of our shared humanity. And as we become mindful of our intentions, our life transforms. It ceases to be a random series of events and becomes a conscious, meaningful, and beautiful path of awakening. What is the final shore, the true destination for which the raft was built? In Buddhism, the ultimate goal is called nirvana, nibbana. This word, too, is widely misunderstood. Nirvana is not a heaven-like paradise that awaits us after death. It is a state of freedom available here and now in this very life. The word literally means to extinguish, to blow out. What is extinguished? The fires of greed, hatred, and delusion. What remains is the mind's final, unshakable liberation. A peace beyond conditions. Imagine you have carried a massive boulder on your back since childhood. It is so heavy you can scarcely remember life without it. The strain in your shoulders, the ache in your legs, these have become so constant, you assume they are simply the way life is. The weight dictates how you walk, where you can go, how you see the world. Every step is a burden. Then one day, through deep insight, you finally understand. You can put it down. With a great sigh, you let the boulder roll from your back. It settles onto the earth, and in that instant you feel a lightness, a freedom you never knew was possible. The air feels different. The colors look brighter. You stand tall. You can run. You can dance. That relief, that unburdening, that is a glimpse of nirvana. Not an escape from life, but the beginning of truly living, free from the crushing weight of mental suffering. Nirvana is the natural flowering of the truths we have explored. When you truly realize impermanence, clinging to fleeting pleasures is extinguished. When you realize not self, the ego's endless projects of protection and self-promotion are extinguished. When you realize the truth of dukkha and its cause, craving itself is extinguished. The extinguishing of these fires is nirvana. It is not a blank void. It is not numbness. The texts describe it as supreme happiness, but a happiness unlike any other. It is not fragile because it does not depend on conditions. It is the steady, radiant peace of a mind that is no longer at war with itself or with reality. A person who has realized nirvana still walks in the world. They still feel the heat of the sun, the sting of a cut, the ache of grief. But those experiences do not ignite the second arrow, the arrow of mental suffering, of judgment, of resistance, of the story this should not be. Instead, they meet life with vast, compassionate equanimity. They are like the deep ocean. On the surface, waves rise and fall, but in the depths, all is utterly still. This is the freedom of nirvana. This state of awakening is characterized by boundless compassion. When one's own suffering is extinguished, the heart naturally turns outward, toward all beings still caught in the fire. Nirvana cannot be forced through willpower, any more than a flower can be opened by pulling on its petals. It unfolds naturally when the conditions are ripe, when the soil of mindfulness is tended, when the water of compassion is poured, when the weeds of clinging are gently removed. The path itself is the practice, and the practice itself is the goal. So, the final instruction is simple. Continue to practice mindfulness, returning again and again to this breath, this step, this moment. Continue to practice compassion, watering the seeds of kindness in yourself and in others. Continue to investigate reality, seeing impermanence and not self as they reveal themselves in the smallest details of daily life. Continue to practice letting go, loosening your grip on everything that causes stress and contraction. There is no magic formula. Each mindful breath, each kind thought, each moment of clarity is a step toward freedom. Rest in the possibility of this liberation. Know that a peace beyond understanding is not myth, but the natural potential of your own heart. Let this trust give you courage and patience for the journey. You are not merely trying to feel a little better. You are walking a path that leads to the complete and total end of suffering. A timeless Zen story, Yamoka Teshu was a brilliant young student of Zen. He had studied the Buddhist teachings in depth and believed he had developed a sophisticated understanding of the highest truths. He was especially drawn to the doctrines of emptiness and non-duality. In his confidence, he felt sure his grasp of these profound concepts marked true spiritual attainment. Hearing of Master Duan's great wisdom, Yamoka set out to meet him. He imagined their meeting as a dialogue of equals, an exchange of subtle philosophical insight. When he entered the master's simple room, he found Duan sitting quietly, smoking his bamboo pipe. The air was calm, but Yamoka was eager to demonstrate his understanding. He began to speak, his voice carrying the authority of a scholar. The mind, the Buddha, and all sentient beings, none truly exist. All phenomena, when examined closely, are empty of inherent existence. Their true nature is emptiness itself. There is no realization to be attained, for there is no one to attain it. There is no delusion to be overcome, because delusion itself is empty. There is no sage, no ordinary person, only concepts empty of reality. There are no teachings to be given and nothing to receive. He finished his eloquent exposition with satisfaction, certain that the master would nod in approval. No teacher, no student, no sage, no ordinary man, no delusion, no realization. These were the words Yamoka Teshu had offered with great confidence, weaving emptiness into a flawless net of concepts. Master Duan sat quietly throughout, smoking his bamboo pipe, his face a still pond, neither approving nor rejecting the elaborate exposition. When Yamoka finally stopped, waiting eagerly for acknowledgement, the master gave none. He simply sat, pipe in hand, in silence. Then without a word he lifted the pipe and struck Yamoka sharply on the head. The blow was sudden, painful, real. In an instant, Yamoka's composure shattered. His face flushed, his body tensed. Anger erupted like fire. "Why did you hit me?" he shouted. "What kind of teaching is this? How dare you strike a guest who came here to discuss the Dharma respectfully?" Master Duan looked at him with a faint smile. "If nothing exists," he said calmly, "then where did this anger come from?" Yamoka stood speechless. His entire fortress of philosophy crumbled before the raw immediacy of his own reaction. His eloquent concepts of emptiness vanished in the face of pain and anger. What was revealed in that moment was the vast gap between intellectual knowledge and embodied wisdom. The Buddha himself warned, "Do not believe something simply because you have heard it. Do not believe it because it is repeated by many, but when you see for yourself that it is true, when it leads to goodness and benefit for all, then live by it." The lesson is clear. It is not enough to recite teachings. We must live them. We too can fall into Yamoka's trap. We can study emptiness while clinging tightly to our own identity as a spiritual person. We can talk about non-attachment while fiercely defending our opinions. We can explain enlightenment with precision while still losing our temper at the slightest irritation. Conceptual knowledge gives us the illusion of progress. But when life presses us, when pain strikes or when anger flares, our theories can prove hollow. Master Duan's blow was not aggression, it was compassion. It was a mirror showing Yamoka exactly where his realization had not yet touched his life. The story invites us to ask, where do I speak of peace, but still live in conflict? It is not an invitation to despair, but to honesty, to see clearly where the work still lies. For the true Dharma is not in words, it is in the quiet courage to live what we have seen. From Yamoka to No Water, No Moon, Yamoka's lesson was sharp and immediate. Words are not enough. Concepts, however precise, cannot shield us from the pipe strikes of life. And so, we are reminded, true wisdom is not what we can say about emptiness, but how empty we can remain when life presses us. This brings us to another timeless Zen story, one that speaks to the moment when understanding transcends effort, when striving falls away and realization dawns naturally. It is the story of No Water, No Moon. Chiano was a devoted nun who had given many years of her life to Zen practice. She meditated long hours. She studied the sutras diligently. She wrestled endlessly with koans, those paradoxical riddles meant to shake the mind free from concepts. But despite all her sincere effort, realization eluded her. She felt stuck, weighed down by the very striving that had once inspired her. One evening, after a long day of practice, she went to draw water from the monastery well. She carried with her an old bucket made of bamboo, held together with worn strips of rope. As she filled the bucket, she looked down and saw the reflection of the moon shimmering on the water's surface. For a moment she paused, captivated by the beauty of the image. Just then, the old bucket's rope snapped. The bamboo slats gave way, the water spilled out onto the ground, and with it the moon vanished. In that instant, Chiono was struck by a realization deeper than anything the sutras or koans had ever given her. She whispered, "With this and that I tried to keep the bucket together, and then the bamboo strips broke. No water, no moon, emptiness in my hand." Her striving dissolved. Her years of effort collapsed into a moment of direct seeing. There was never water, there was never a moon, there was only the luminous emptiness of reality as it is. Where Yamoka's pride crumbled under the pipe, Chiono's effort dissolved with the broken bucket. Both stories point to the same truth. True realization is not in words, not in effort, not in holding tightly. It is in the moment when holding ceases. Her years of discipline were not wasted. They were the soil in which the seed of awakening ripened. Each painful hour on the cushion, each restless night, each moment of doubt, all of it prepared the ground. But the fruit itself appeared only when the bucket broke. The breakthrough came not from adding more effort, but from the collapse of effort. Not from holding tighter, but from release. The story of no water, no moon shines a light on a deep paradox in the spiritual path. We begin by believing enlightenment is something far away, something we must earn through striving. We think if I meditate enough, study enough, discipline myself enough, someday I will get it. But awakening is not a prize at the end of the road. It is not an object to be obtained.
It is the recognition of what has always been true.
The moon was never in the bucket. It was always in the sky. In the same way, our glimpses of peace, clarity, or joy during meditation are not the goal. They are reflections, temporary and changeable. What the path reveals is the ever-present reality, the luminous awareness that does not depend on circumstances. This is why the Buddha said, "Look within. You are the Buddha." For us, the bucket is the ego, the endless striving self that tries to capture and hold reality in concepts and effort. The water is the restless mind, and the moon's reflection is the illusion that awakening is out there to be grasped. When the bucket breaks, when striving ceases, when the mind empties itself, awakening is revealed as the ground that was always there. So, like Chiono, we practice sincerely. We cultivate discipline, mindfulness, compassion. But we also learn the deeper art, the art of letting go. For the ultimate step is not another effort, but the falling away of effort. No water, no moon, only the vast, luminous reality of things as they are. Her breakthrough was not the result of force, but of release. Years of discipline softened the soil of her mind, yet the seed blossomed only when the bucket fell apart. The story asks us to see that what we seek is not hidden in some distant future, but present in the very awareness that seeks. The seeker and the sought were never two. The moon and its reflection were never separate. In our own lives, this pattern repeats itself. We chase success, happiness, enlightenment, as if they were treasures to be captured and stored safely. We protect our fleeting reflections, moments of peace, flashes of joy as if they were the source itself, but the true source is not in the reflection.
It is in the sky.
It is in the vast awareness that has always been here, quietly present beneath all our striving. When the bucket breaks, when striving drops away, the truth that has never left us is revealed. This does not mean abandoning practice. Chiono's years of effort were not wasted. They were the preparation. But it does mean holding practice lightly, as one carries water that may spill at any moment. It means engaging wholeheartedly, yet not grasping at results. As Zen Master Bankei said, The unborn is the Buddha mind itself. When you realize this fact, the Buddha mind with which you were born has been doing the Buddha's work from the very beginning. The conquest Chiono achieved was not victory over ignorance, but the realization that the battle itself was unnecessary.
What buckets am I still carrying?
What reflections am I trying to preserve? Forgetting the real moon above, what would happen if I allowed the bottom to fall out of my container and trusted that what I seek is already shining within me? The Buddha reminded us, within you there is a stillness and a sanctuary to which you can retreat at any time and be yourself. Perhaps what we are looking for has been looking through our eyes all along. The old jeweler took the stone with reverent care and held it to the light. He turned it slowly, studying every facet, every fire within. His breath caught. At last, he whispered, eyes shining, a diamond of rare clarity and perfect heart. He looked at the student with a tenderness that felt like blessing. My child, this is beyond price. If I must name a figure, I would offer my entire shop, my savings, my home, and it would still be an insult to its true worth. Such a gem is not merely bought, it is safeguarded, honored, and polished until its inner light can guide kings. The student bowed, astonished, and remembered his teacher's instruction. He declined, thanked the jeweler, and hurried back to the monastery. When he placed the stone before his master and recounted the day, the oranges, the sack of potatoes, the 500 gold coins, and finally the jeweler's awe, the master smiled. Now you see, he said, the value others offer does not reveal the worth of the diamond. It reveals the limits of their sight. The orange seller was not wrong. He simply saw oranges. The goldsmith saw more. The jeweler saw clearly. He pushed the stone gently toward the student. This diamond is your own heart-mind, your Buddha nature. Some will see only a rock. Some will see a trinket. A few will recognize the jewel. Do not argue with the orange seller, and do not sell your life for a sack of potatoes. Keep company with those who can see, and learn to see this way for others. He paused, then added, and remember, polishing reveals, it does not add. Your practice is the cloth. Your kindness is the cut. Your steadiness is the setting. Let the inner light do the rest. The teaching beneath the tale, your worth is intrinsic. Opinions reflect the seer, not the seen. Praise and blame, gain and loss. The 8 worldly winds cannot change the diamond in your coat. Choose your jeweler. Seek Kalyana Mitta, good friends and teachers who reflect your true nature back to you, who nurture your clarity, compassion, and courage. Become a jeweler for others. Train your eyes to recognize the hidden brilliance in those around you. Let your words be settings that allow their light to shine. Polish, don't prove. Mindfulness, ethical care, and wise effort don't manufacture value. They reveal it. Your practice is not self-justification. It's simple, steady polishing. Release low offers. When life offers you oranges for your diamond, dismissive feedback, cheap approval, roles that shrink you, bow politely and decline. Return to the river of your practice, a short reflection. Bring to mind a recent moment when you felt undervalued. Notice the tightness, the urge to defend. Quietly say, this is a diamond. Their offer reflects their sight, not my worth. Breathe, loosen the... Now recall someone in your life who forgets their own brilliance. Ask, how can I see them like the jeweler? Offer one sentence today that names their goodness. Finally, place a hand on your heart. Whisper, polish, not prove. Reveal, not perform. Let the body soften around that truth, weaving it all together. We began with friction and the first noble truth. Met Mara's fear at the loom. Learned to see thoughts as clouds, and to mend our cracks with gold. We discovered impermanence and the open sky of not self, traced dependent origination in a single grain of rice, and learned the middle way's living balance, neither too tight nor too loose. We watered the heart with metta, uncovered the luminous mind, steadied attention with breath, and practiced letting go, placing down the raft when we reached new shores. We looked deeply into emptiness and saw fullness, into karma and found the freedom of intention. We touched nirvana's breeze, the lightness after the boulder falls. And with the Zen tales we remembered, embodiment over eloquence, release over striving, no water, no moon, the sky. Now this last story asks you to remember your worth and to reflect worth back to the world. Let's end with a quiet bow. Close your eyes. Feel the breath arrive and leave on its own. On the inhale, Polish. On the exhale, may you be steady. May you be free. If this sanctuary speaks to you, subscribe to Insightful Journey and return whenever you need to. Remember, the jewel is already yours. The Zen master continued, his voice quiet but steady. True wisdom lies in learning to see yourself through the eyes of the master jeweler. Your worth is not determined by how others appraise you, nor by how much you produce, achieve, or possess. Like the diamond, your nature is already radiant, already complete. It does not depend on circumstances. It only depends on sight, on learning to see clearly. This teaching brings us to a profound practice, learning to polish the jewel of our own awareness. When we polish a diamond, we don't add brilliance. We simply remove the layers that block its light. In the same way, spiritual practice does not create our worth. It reveals what has always been there.
How to polish your own diamond.
Mindful reflection. Each day, pause and notice the ways you judge yourself by external measures. Gently ask, am I seeing myself through the eyes of the orange seller or the master jeweler? Compassionate self-talk. When your inner critic says, I am not enough, answer with kindness, my worth is beyond measure. Nothing can diminish it. Seek wise mirrors. Surround yourself with people who can see your brilliance. Teachers, friends, mentors, those who look beyond surface appearances and remind you of your deeper value. Be a jeweler for others. The more you practice seeing others' worth beyond their flaws and masks, the more naturally you'll begin to see your own. The master ended his lesson by placing the diamond back in the student's hands. Never forget, he said, this stone was priceless from the very beginning, just as your life has been priceless from the moment you drew your first breath. Don't wait for others to recognize it before you live from that truth. The student bowed, tears in his eyes. For the first time, he felt not the fragile worth of a stone measured in oranges or coins, but the immeasurable brilliance of a jewel that no one could ever buy or sell. Reflection prompt for the list. Tonight, take a quiet moment. Place your hand gently over your heart. Whisper to yourself, like the diamond, my worth is beyond measure. It cannot be bought or sold. It simply is. Refined closing expansion. Our journey together has been a weaving threads of wisdom from ancient stories, gentle practices for daily life, and the quiet recognition of the jewel already within you. We began with Mara, who discovered she was not merely the weaver but the loom itself, able to hold the full spectrum of life. We walked with Isara, who showed us that cracks are not flaws, but golden seams of impermanence. We looked with Sila into a single grain of rice, seeing the whole universe within it. We tuned our lives with the sitar string, learning the balance of the middle way. We followed Vimal into the forest, where kindness watered his once parched heart. We witnessed Chayano's bucket break, realizing that what we sought had never been missing. We carried the diamond to the jeweler, finally understanding that our worth is beyond measure. Each of these stories has been pointing to the same truth. You are already whole, already luminous, already free. Now, as you rest here in this final practice, let the stories dissolve into silence. Feel your breath rise and fall. Feel the warmth at your heart. Trust that even when clouds gather, the sky of your mind remains vast and clear. Trust that the jewel of your being is safe, shining quietly, waiting only for you to recognize it. Rest in this knowing. You are the loom. You are the golden seam. You are the sky. You are the ocean. You are the diamond. Rest well, dear one. The path is always here, and so is your freedom.